Hello, guys. Welcome to another exclusive interview from Essentially Sports. Today, I have the immense pleasure to have with me one of the greatest Indian tennis players to have graced the most grandest stages on the ATP Tour. A fantastic personality who is not only known for his tennis accolades, but also for his achievements off the court. So, thank you, Mr. Vijay Amritraj, to take time from your schedule to talk with us.
Thank you. Great to be on the show with you, Vivek.
Let me just start off by congratulating you on receiving the Golden Achievement Award recently in London. How are you feeling at that time? What were the emotions running through you when you received that award?
Needless to say, it's very special to receive something like this. First and foremost, as I said in my speech there, that I received it as an Indian, first and foremost, the first Indian to receive it. So to me, it just given this accolade to all of our countrymen and women, all of the athletes who play for India. I think it's a very special feeling to receive it for services to the game and for my duration of how long I've kind of been at this. But most important of all is the support that I've received over the years from, Indians in India, Indians overseas, in the different countries that I played in. And so I always accept these things, which is very, very special on behalf of all Indians who have done that and, literally put me in an elevated position because of that.
You've been in commentary right now for quite a few years right now. So how are you enjoying that part of, phase in your career right now?
I think the commentary and presentation on television, which I started way back in 91, 92, has been a real eye-opener for me because it was the first thing I did was the Grand Slam events right after my tennis career. And it gave me an opportunity to see the sport both from a viewer's perspective and from a player's perspective. So it gave me it was really a good challenge to actually present the sport, one, to the viewer who understands and knows tennis very well, and he or she plays the game, and others who might not understand the game well enough and try to bring them into the sport. So it was a wonderful challenge to be able to accommodate both audiences and at the same time enjoy what I was doing.
Well, I would like to say as an Indian, I really didn't grow up watching you play, but the commentary has been amazing. I've actually grown into tennis because of you, and I hope that you continue doing this across your next few
Thank
years.
you.
So
thank you, Vivek. Thank you.
So other than commenting, of course, you've kept yourself very busy after retirement. You've gone into multiple movies, you've gone into multiple TV series, and of course now you're planning to launch your own documentary as well. So how did that experience inculcate into your experience? Whatever you're doing right now, how did that come into the picture? Could you tell us about that?
I think the movie part of it came from a very suddenly, to be honest. I was playing on the center court at Wimbledon when the producer of the Bond pictures, the late great Cubby Broccoli, was watching the match with his daughter, and they approached me after that they apparently had looked at several Indians for the particular role they were looking for, and eventually offered me a screen test to be able to do at Pinewood Studios. So with the director John Glenn, and I had never done something like that before, and so I basically did it because I figured, who could say they worked at Pinewood Studios and played at Wimbledon, So it was a wonderful opportunity for me to challenge myself to something else. And after I did the screen test with the great American actor James Brolin for that particular screen test with the director John Glenn, they offered me the role and got me on for 14 weeks or something to that effect, and we were to shoot 10, 11 weeks in the UK and 3 weeks in India. And it was just the most magnificent experience one could possibly imagine. What goes into not just making a film, but making a Bond film, and how each of these things are so intricately managed by the production team, and the end result is a spectacular film that the world enjoys.
And it's funny you mentioned it was a challenging thing. How challenging and how different was it from your tennis career? Because even of course growing up in India, it's not a sport that really comes as an option naturally for Indians. So how challenging was your acting role, and how difficult was it when you compare it with tennis?
It was a challenge because it was new, and how things are positioned, where the camera is, and who you're talking to, and where is the person you're acting with. Uh, where is how good is the lighting on parts of your face or on yourself, and how are they doing that? You need to understand all aspects of it before you can actually deliver the line and what the director expecting and what he wants according to the character. So I think that way it was a tremendous challenge, but it was a spectacular learning curve for me because I was working with the most professional team in the business. The crew was spectacular, the director was terrific, and of course, the star I was working with, Roger Moore, was a very, very special man. Not only was he a fun guy to be around, he was a spectacular gentleman, and he helped me through a lot of situations, and we got along very well. So the rapport between him and me, I think, also came off very well on screen. But overall, it was a spectacular experience because it taught me more about how movies are made and what goes into it. Very different from playing tennis, because tennis is very straightforward. You play well, you win. You play badly, you lose, and that's it. There are only two people playing, and you're done. But here, there's so many peripherals that are involved to make the scene look good.
It's interesting you say that tennis is much straightforward, but I don't think it was really that straightforward to you, because you left your house with barely 3.5 pounds in your pocket, and you had a lot of challenges coming into you had a lot of health issues as well initially in your career as well. So what would you term as the most challenging thing in your tennis career? Was it the physical aspects of it? Was it the mental aspect of it? What was the most challenging thing for you growing up in your tennis career?
The first one would have to be the health issues, because it started at a young age, and the tennis part of it came into play to be able to overcome my health issue. That was the reason tennis came into the forefront. And, eventually, after the discipline and the sacrifices that was made by my parents, especially mom, everything that went into it was magnified 10 times over to be able to help me play tennis, to get over my health issues, so that I could go to school, I could do normal things that kids were expected to do. And but strangely enough, tennis became very much a part of my DNA from a young age, and I got good fairly quickly. So before my 14th birthday, I ended up winning a major college tournament, and then you ended up winning another college tournament by the time I was 14, and eventually traveled abroad to Asia, to Malaysia, to play the Junior Asian Championships, even when I was still 13 and a half. That was for under 18 players. And then eventually my first UK trip was at 15. My first USA trip was at about 18. So everything happened fairly quickly, and I became number one in India by the time I was 18. And then by 19, I ended up being on the world stage and beating Lever at the US Open, and beating all the following year at the US Open, and so on. So a lot of things happened right after that, but it was health was the first thing to overcome, the bad health.
And did you look up to any people who helped you in this journey of yours initially in your career? Because it seemed like a difficult part to choose with the physical conditions that you had. So was it your
Well,
family?
I didn't actually choose the path myself. I mean, it was suggested by the doctors in the hospital, and my parents were the sport of choice was tennis. They both played tennis, especially my mom. Dad started playing tennis after he married her, and they became very, very fond of the game. And the mother's side of the family always loved the game. Anand was already playing tennis, my older brother. And so I think that was very much a part of the DNA of the family. So when this was said to my parents, then, my mother took it upon herself to make sure that I could be given everything and not left behind because of health issues. And so that's the way it got started, and then all of a sudden it took its own course as I started to get better and better.
That's wonderful to hear. That's wonderful to hear. You've also got your own foundation that you've started, the Vijay Amritraj Foundation. Was that an inspiration because of the struggles that you had faced in your initial part of the career as well?
Oh, no question, Vivek. I think the issue of having grown up with health conditions and health issues, but having the support of parents like I've had, are the ones that made the difference. And unfortunately, not everyone is blessed with those kinds of parents. And often enough, there are children around the world who are either left behind, not loved, orphans, not having access to all of the basics. So I was hoping that at some point, if I ever get good enough at something and I was able to serve the community in whether it's one family or five families or 5,000 families is not as important but as doing something that can make a difference to the lives of families that might not have had the kind of help and support and parents that I had. And so, having served the United Nations for nearly 7 years as a messenger of peace for Kofi Annan, once my term ended, then I went on to start this foundation in the US to be able to help charities on the ground in India.
That's great to hear. You of course got your documentary coming in as well, which I think focuses on that aspect of your life as well. It's of course been, it's been directed by an Oscar-nominated director, Sami Khan. And how has that been shaping up? Could you give us more details about your documentary that's upcoming right now?
I think the first issue was the fact that something was going to be made about me and my story. And when I wrote a book, my only book that I've written, an autobiography, way back in 1990, when it was released, it was meant to really target it towards young children and to make sure that they can also believe that the impossible can happen, and to be able to dream big and with work and the right kind of ethics and the kind of support that I've had, you can be what you really are, dream to be. And so I hope that this film, this documentary, can tell a story that it's possible to do what you want to do and what you want to achieve and where you want to get to without losing the train of thought as to where you came from. And I think that is a critical element of my story, the way I've been very fortunate to have, as I've always said, the kind of parents that I've had to give me the opportunity to do all of this that I never, ever dreamt would be real. And today, having had a tennis career that was very fruitful for a very long duration of time, to have played Davis Cup for India for 20 years, to have done a Bond picture and a Star Trek motion picture, and to have television series of my own in the United States, to have been on talk shows around the world, and so on and so forth. These are not things that you can possibly imagine when you're 5, 6, 7 years old and not in the peak of health. So the impossible can happen with the kind of help and support that I've had.
Talking about the impossible, of course, you went on to have a phenomenal tennis career as well. I mean, you made the grandest stages of all. You beat the biggest players in their prime. You were, of course, I don't even remember if you think you were within the part of the ABC. Basically, if you remember, Connors, Borg, and Amritraj. So, which was your fondest victory of all? You've of course beaten the top players in their primes. You've of course beaten Connors multiple times as well. So, which was your most fondest memory of all of them?
I think you always pick the early ones because they resonate better for you at the time when you were a nobody and you're suddenly playing on the center court at the US Open against someone like Rod Laver, your idol, the greatest of all time, and the only man to win 2 official Grand Slams. And on national television in the US, the first Indian to be on it, and across the entire country on CBS, and a long match in front of 18,000 people who didn't know who I was. And then you come through in those kinds of situations and you end up winning in 5 sets is what put not just me on the map, but I think it put Indians on the map worldwide. And that made a huge difference to, one, the way I believed in what needs to be done, and two, also to be able to get even better, to be able to compete against the best, which I was fortunate enough to do thereafter for many, many years. But certainly that one stands out because I was 19 years old when that happened. And the next year I went on to beat Borg as well at the US Open, and then played numerous great matches at Wimbledon and the others as well. So I think the important aspect here is that when you do something and the first to do it, when there is an original aspect to it, it kind of stands out more in your mind and resonates more with the people.
You of course talk about putting Indians on the map because of your achievements, but no one has even come close to performing as well as you've done in singles. Of course, we've had double successes with multiple names. Even Sania Mirza, I think right now is on her last year of the tour. What do you think has been lacking in terms of Indians in the singles game? Because they've had a fair amount of success in terms of doubles, but nobody has even come close to anything big in a while since you've graced the court. So what has been lacking in terms of Indian tennis when it comes to singles?
I mean, I think there are a variety of things that need to come into place. In the old days, it used to be lack of facilities, it used to be lack of sponsorship, lack of television, lack of local government support, lack of coaching, and a whole slew of stuff that we didn't have when we were coming up, and especially in the late 60s, early 70s, and so on. Plus, our physical attributes were always, we were smaller in stature, and we were competing with guys who were bigger, stronger, and better physically overseas. And this is, by the way, across all of Asia, not necessarily only out of India. So, but now that's not the case. Now, the boys who I know across India who are playing Davis Cup for us, and also traveling the world playing challenger tournaments and stuff, are all my height. They're big, very big boys. They're strong physically. They serve big. They have tremendous support from different parts of the country. Sponsorships are available. Facilities are there. You're going abroad constantly. You can train in Spain. You can train in Florida. You can train in the hot spots of the world. And so it really now comes down to a very, very strong commitment from the individual themselves to be able to risk everything in the kitchen sink to make sure that you can hit that gold standard and compete at the highest levels of the ATP Tour and the WTA Tour, and put us back in the Davis Cup and the Fed Cup where we belong. And we haven't been able to get back into those top 16 teams or 18 teams for quite a while. And I think that's the disappointing factor, because in the past we used to be the best team in Asia, and now we struggle to be in the top 4.
Of course, we've got big names from India as well. Which one of the names has impressed you the most? Has it been Sumit Nagal, who of course who took a set away from Federer, the US Open as well? You've got Yuki Bhambri, you've got Somdev, of course, who's retired right now. But has any one of these names impressed you in the recent times in terms of singles?
Vivek, it's hard to put your finger on it, because it's important to, when you say you're impressed with someone, you need to be able to show some kind of strong performance on tour, on the ATP Tour, of beating top names or having the 3 or 4 good wins over a 12-month period. Moving up the ladder on a regular basis, in rankings. You see a lot of guys you never heard of today who have, in a year, 12, 18 months, they move from 400 to 150 to 75, and then the next thing they are in the top 20. and the work continues to increase more and more because you're playing better and better players. So I think those things are important to be able to judge someone's improvement rather than staying back in the hundreds and 200s and 300s and then trying to perform constantly but not getting past the top 50 to be able to give us a chance in the Davis Cup.
That's interesting to hear, because the kind of competition we've had in the singles right now, not just considering Indians, but across the ATP, it's been very difficult for people to topple the big names. Of course, even right now, it's been Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic winning the biggest tournaments. Of course, you were there at the Wimbledon this year as well. You saw Novak Djokovic triumph again after almost 1 year of drought in terms of slams. What did you think of his performance and the numbers that have increased, and he's gotten close to Rafa? And what did you think about his performance there?
Well, obviously nothing short of outstanding. He's always been one of the toughest ever players we've ever seen mentally, and I think the fact that what happened to him in Australia, and he had to come back and then start playing some tournaments. So he was lack of match practice by the time he even got to the French, and the way he performed at the French itself was admirable, losing to Nadal in a tight 4-set match. And I think he worked even harder by the time he got to the grass at Wimbledon to be able to give himself enough for practice and matches to be able to do what he did. But the interesting thing was, just when things got difficult against someone like a Yannick Sinner in the 5th set, being down 2 sets to love, it looked like he was down and out. And that's when he started to get better and better and better. Yannick Sinner is certainly the future of men's tennis, no question about it. Shapovalov, Sinner, Alcaraz, all these guys, Kyrgios, all these guys are knocking on the doors of the top names. But still, at the end of the day, as we've seen 3 Grand Slams over with, the same 2 names that keep coming up after the Grand Slams. So it's going to be interesting to see the US Open, because at the moment Djokovic cannot play, and it's going to be interesting to see if Nadal is going to be fit enough and strong enough to play and well healed from a stomach injury as well in that quarterfinal. So we'll wait and see also whether Federer plans to make a comeback and thinks he can come back and play on the hard courts in the US Open. But we're still waiting for that all-important outsider or a challenger to pick up a Grand Slam this year.
Yeah, it's of course interesting to see you pinning your hopes on Federer still to come back and compete for the bigger. It's good to hear that from you, of course. But that's not been the case with the WTA Tour. We've had a new champion this year as well with Elina Rybakina, and we've seen multiple different champions in the past couple of years. Of course, there has been a little bit of domination and consistency shown by Ash Barty and Iga Swiatek. But at the same time, we have seen multiple champions at the Grand Slam level. So what do you think has been the difference there? Because has it been just the mental side where Rafa and Djokovic have been really, pushing themselves, or has it been something different that is happening on the WTA side right now?
I think what's so interesting about the WTA Tour is the fact that we are seeing new players, we are seeing new champions, we are seeing new challengers coming along, we are seeing two players who you probably have never seen before play great matches against one another. These two played a fantastic final at Wimbledon this year. Yes, Ons looked like she was the favorite coming into the match, obviously to win. But at the end of the day, the unheralded Rybakina, who had seeded 17, coming into the final, just played absolutely freely, and the nerves didn't get hold of her even towards the very end of the match. So I think when you look at these variety of players playing, even the way she beat Halep along the way made a very big difference. So I think as we see more and more of these girls all bunching up at the top, it's really exciting to watch it, because you don't know which two are actually going to get into the final. Whereas in men's tennis, it's still been, at the end of the day, it's been these 3 guys who have actually been able to win the majors. But I think that that precipice. We have reached that precipice as far as men's tennis is concerned. So on the one side, we are seeing the favorites win. On the other side, we are seeing the challengers fight it out at every weekend.
It surely is exciting right now to watch the WTA tour, especially. Of course, you spoke about Sinner, you spoke about Felix. Who do you think is, because of course the kind of buzz that Alcaraz has generated this year by winning the couple of Masters under his belt, and of course he's reached the quarterfinals as well. Who do you think has been is the closest right now to get to that dream state of competing? Of course, Kyrgios, it's not probably his forte to compete at that kind of level consistently, but yeah, Alcaraz, Felix, like you said. So, who do you think has got the potential right now to knock on the doors?
I think there are lots of guys who are looking to win a slam, from Tsitsipas to Shapovalov to Kyrgios to Felix to a variety to Sinner. But I think Alcaraz is still kind of the front runner in that group, maybe by a short nose, simply because he seems like he's a bit more of a complete player. If you look at him, he's able to show variety. He's able to show the lobs. He's able to show a very powerful forehand. He's able to attack well. He moves forward. There's nothing wrong with his volleys. He's mentally very strong, and he also, for not a very, very big guy, he looks physically strong. So he looks like he can go the distance. So I think when you take all of these things in consideration, he might be the slight front runner with the nose in front. But all of these guys right there have to survive injuries. You have to come out of, when you come out of an injury, it takes you a while to get back into it. A Berrettini, a Zverev, all these guys who have been recently injured or sick will have a little bit of more of a learning curve to get to the US Open in peak form. So by the time Cincinnati and Toronto and these events conclude, I think we'll have a better shot at who's going to get the US Open.
That's very interesting to hear. Of course, we've got Cincinnati, like you said, in Toronto, and the US Open swing coming up right now. Another exciting name that we're looking forward to see is Serena Williams, who of course returned after such a long time to Wimbledon. Of course, she had a very exciting first round match that she went down in. What did you think of her return, and where do you think can she really come back and compete at that kind of a level right now after such a long hiatus? And of course, with the motherhood and all of the other priorities that have come into her life, do you really think, because of course, US Open being her home tournament, do you really think there's a chance for her to this time, perform a little bit more better?
Yes, I mean, when you have someone as great as Serena Williams come on court, the whole match revolves around only how Serena Williams plays. It has very little to do with the opponent. Yes, the opponent needs to be strong and firm and mentally tough and all of it, and not get blown off the court, because Serena can do that to anybody. But the couple of things come into play with her at this point. One is coming back after a long layoff is never easy. And even for a great champion like Serena Williams, she needs some matches under her belt. That's an important aspect. The second thing is, of course, her physical ability. Does she feel fit enough to win 7 matches on a hard court in the US? That's not easy. And it can get very hot and muggy in Queens when the matches are on. So that's a very hot month, end of August, beginning of September. Thirdly, does she have still the mental fortitude to keep herself so closeted for the 7 matches now, which she hasn't done in a while? But only because it's Serena Williams, you can't bet against her. But I think if she's physically well enough to play 7 matches, or physically well enough to move about the court freely with completely injury-free, I think you would never bet against her.
That is good to hear. It's really good to hear that you are still pinning your hopes on Federer and the likes of Serena Williams. And in fact, I would like to come back to one of the recent interviews Andy Murray had given, and he had said that it was really unfortunate that he played in an era where all these big 3 players were there. He said, I would have liked to play in an era where these three wouldn't have existed. So I'd like to ask you a question on a personal level. Would you have liked to played in this era, just to enjoy the kind of level of tennis that is going on right now with the big three, or would you have preferred to play in the Jimmy Connors and the Bjorn Borg and the McEnroe era?
Well, I've always said that I've been very fortunate to have played in the era that I did. McEnroe, Borg, and Connors were arguably three of the best that have ever played the game. They were all three different personalities. They all three brought different aspects of tennis to the tennis match, and three different kinds of personalities as well when they played. The game was the game at the time in the 70s was always on network television worldwide. It had an overwhelming audience that watched matches even when these three guys were not playing, because there were numerous guys like myself, Dickie Stockton, Raul Ramirez, Brian Gottfried, Roscoe Tanner, Peter McNamara, all of us who brought a lot to the game besides the three top names of my generation. I think when I look at the three of them and what they've achieved and the matches that I've had against them, I was very grateful that I played during that era. Now, watching these three guys playing itself is magic, because to think that between the three of them, they could have 63 majors is not just unimaginable, but quite honestly quite unbelievable. So you're looking at three guys who could have been the greatest of their generations had they played at different times and different eras.
Yeah.
But to have played against these three guys would have also been quite spectacular, because you would have had to raise your game to that level and consistently worked against them if you had any chance of wins. So I think Murray's game was pushed to the limit because these three guys pushed him to the limit. And that's why he got better. That's why he won the three majors. That's why he won the Olympic golds. That's why he was pushed to a point where he had to be better than he could have been in any other era.
That's a really good insight to hear that Andy Murray's level probably wouldn't have been the same if the big three wouldn't have pushed him. But do you think Murray as well, after the hip replacement, he has not really made any big waves in tennis as well, and he was of course expecting a lot this year, with the home support and coming back to Wimbledon with some kind of hope. Do you really think he has it within him to win a big title in the near future?
Yes and no. I think winning 7 matches over 5 sets is a lot more difficult than winning a tournament around the world on the tour, because that could potentially be 5 matches over a week period, which I think Andy is capable of doing. Whereas in women's tennis, someone like Serena Williams can come back, though it's 7 matches, it's still 2 or 3 sets. So she could get enough of a reprieve if she doesn't have long matches. In these 5-set matches like Djokovic had against Sinner or Nadal had against Taylor Fritz, I mean, those kinds of matches can, literally throw you under the gun, and it's very difficult to, if you have any kind of injury or recovering from surgery and things like that, when you come out of those situations. So it's hard both ways for the boys and girls, men and women rather. But at the end of the day, Murray winning a Grand Slam at this point is a little bit of a tall order.
All right. I'll let you go. Just a couple of questions I had. Who do you think right now is the greatest player of the? Of course, there's a lot of talk about the GOAT debate, and I just wanted to ask you on that question, because you of course played against some of the greatest players, and now you're watching them live as well. Who do you think right now is the biggest name in tennis, and who would you call the GOAT in terms of in the open era especially? Of course, we've had Rod Laver and such big names as well, but who do you think is the greatest in terms of?
Well, I think Vivek, it's always hard to compare generational greatness, because ever since Roger Bannister ran the mile under 4 minutes, there have been several people who've done it after that. It doesn't make him worse. That just makes him even greater, because he did it in the time that he did it. Similarly, when you look back at Laver, when he won the Grand Slam in '62 as an amateur, and then came back and won it again as a professional in 69. He became the only man in history to win the Grand Slam twice. And since then, nobody has won it. The closest that someone has ever come is Djokovic, when he lost in the final of the US Open, being the last match. He won 27 out of 28 matches. So I think when you look at all of the results, you'll have to just go back and check the boxes and say, Lever was the best in his generation, and had he played in any generation, he could have been the best. And Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, playing in the same generation, could have also been the greatest had they played in the 60s and 70s. So I think it's a hard comparison to make when you look back at great athletes over a period of time. But at the end of the day, the greatness is in the way you're able to perform at that particular moment in time. So if in that moment in time, as we see these three guys perform today, is unimaginable, as it was when Lever won the Grand Slam in 69.
That's amazing to hear from you. We finally have a name from you. That's Rod Laver. So I'm going to hold you to that. One last question. One last question I've got for you is: do you have any advice to give to the budding Indian players right now? Of course, you said the physicality right now isn't the problem, and probably it's the commitment or the mental thing, mental fortitude. So, are there a couple of things you would like to say to the Indian players right now?
I think someone who wants to really give this a shot, especially as a youngster, I think you should take it one step at a time, whether you're playing in the juniors first, and then target American college tennis. I think American college tennis does world of good for someone who wants to make the professional tour. So if you get good enough in the juniors and you're able to win major junior championships, you then automatically play some of the senior events, but you'll get very good opportunities to play for colleges in the United States. And those Division I colleges give you incredible experience to prepare for the tour. So depending on how good you get post your first year in college, second year in college, then you can take off and actually go and play the tour for a few years, or complete college and then go on and play it. I think college tennis is a tremendous springboard for pro tennis.
That is amazing to hear. I think this is the first time I've heard this kind of advice coming towards Indian players. It's very niche advice from you as well. So thank you again, Vijay, to have given this time from your schedule. And I really can't wait to see your documentary that is going to come in the recent times. And I'd like to again reiterate the kind of impact you've had despite not playing tennis right now. For the Indians, it's been amazing to watch you commentate, to hear your insights as well. And a quick question, again, a small question is, do you have a name for your documentary that's coming up, or do you want to keep it a secret?
I don't actually know how they're doing it, and the director is in command. The producers are put their heads together with the director, and they are literally quarterbacking the whole thing. And so I'm in it as long as they want me in it. And otherwise, the more important thing is to tell the story that will encourage youngsters and young parents to believe that the impossible can be achieved.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you again to have given us this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Vivek. Nice talking to you. Take care.
Yeah, thank you. You too.